Flowers are very clever. They want the honeybees to come and get the pollen. And another way to get the bees to come, because they do want the pollen, is to also offer a sweet nectar. And so the bees will go to the flower and they will collect nectar, and they will put their tongue down into the center of the flower where the nectar will be, and they will suck it up with their tongue. The bee will store this nectar in her honey crop or honey stomach. Bees have two stomachs. One is your regular stomach for eating food, and the second stomach is called a honey crop or honey stomach. So she'll fill that honey crop up, and then once it's filled, she'll fly back to the hive. What happens next is she will be greeted by a bee just inside the hive, and she will put out her tongue in a process called trophallaxis, and she will unload her honey crop to the bee that greets her. And then that bee will then go into the hive and go up to where the honey is stored, and she will then undo the same thing. She will put out her tongue and unload the honey to a bee that greets her. Now, what is interesting in this process of trophallaxis is where the bee will have a droplet of the nectar on their tongue, and they'll have that kind of their tongue hanging down with that water droplet or nectar droplet on it, and it is exposed to the air. While these droplets are being exposed, they're being evaporated ever so slightly each time. So the bee will continually pull up a droplet on her tongue, expose it to the air, and then put it back, and then pull it up again. Each time she does this, that nectar will become thicker and thicker and have less water in it. When this nectar is passed from bee to bee, and when the bee draws up a droplet of nectar and puts it back and draws it up again to dry it out, these bees are adding enzymes. So there are enzymes from the bees in our honey. And what it does is it alters the sugars and proteins and changes the honey's pH so that it's more acidic. Once she's satisfied that she's dried it down to the right degree, she will lean down into a honeycomb cell and she will regurgitate that honey into the cell. And this process will continue and continue until that honeycomb cell is full. Now, once the bees feel that the honey is cured, they will then cap it with beeswax. But before that happens, there's a lot of work that they have to do with that nectar because it's not cured yet. Curing means that they have dehydrated that nectar to the point where it only has a small amount of moisture in it. And that's when honey is cured properly. It will last forever and it will never go bad. If you actually leave honey that has too much moisture in it, it will ferment. And that's how honey wine mead was discovered, I'm sure. So back to the bees. They're dehydrating this. So then you have bees that are sitting on the combs, and they will crouch their bodies and they will oscillate their wings to create wind. And that wind will blow over those open honeycombs where that nectar is, and it will fan off and dehydrate that honey until it gets to between 17 and 20%. Somehow the bees know when the honey is at that level of moisture. That alone is kind of a miracle. Once that honey is fully cured, that's when the wax capping goes on. And that wax capping will stop the honey from being able to absorb more moisture, and it'll keep dirt out of the honey, etc.